Thank you. Welcome to the February 10th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge. I think we'll begin with a few announcements. I attended a meeting, I think it was last week, that the superintendent had hosted with myself and several members of the community to talk about foundation aid, which is an issue that if you're at all aware of what's going on in the school district and with New York State several years ago, the state, following the 2008 financial crisis, the state froze foundation aid for the public schools. And since that time, the Ossining school districts have seen a significant increase in their student population and a significant increase specifically in their rates of poverty. We're now above the 50% free and reduced lunch. However, the funding has not increased. And while most districts in the state have seen a decrease in population, we've seen an increase. Unfortunately, the increase in foundation aid has not been forthcoming. This year we are anticipating getting $8 million from New York State. If the foundation aid were being maintained and were not being frozen, we would be getting $20 million. That's $12 million less than we would be entitled to if foundation aid were not frozen in the Ossining School District. So if you find that number to be rather startling and upsetting and insane, or if you would just like to reach out to your elected officials, I encourage you to go to the Ossining School District website. It's ossiningufsd.org, and go ahead and sign a petition, a letter to our elected officials at the state level, including the governor, to please take a look at this. Take a look specifically at Ossining. We're in a very small category of schools that are in this kind of circumstance where we see such an increase in population and are most adversely affected by the frozen foundation. So, on a lighter note, somewhat lighter note, join us tomorrow evening, Thursday, at 6:30 at the Ossining Public Library. This month's offering from the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series is Merchants of Doubt, and we will learn about the spin doctors who do such a great job at convincing us of things like climate change is not real or smoking is good for you. And following the film, we will have a really spirited, interesting discussion with some terrific panelists and all of the members of the audience. If you've not attended before, I encourage you to. It's always a really interesting opportunity for the community together to come together and talk about things that are important. So, with that, I open up the floor to my colleagues.
As a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, they have 2 events coming up. One is Let's Put Your City on the Map, a Greater Ossining Chamber and Google partnerships. So if you are a business owner and you're looking to find better ways to market yourself using Google, the member is open to, this particular event is open to members and non-members. Of course, there's a preference for members. And that's going to be on February the 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. And then they also have Increase Your Profitability Through Organized Barter, which essentially is you, for the services that you do, you will get a product from the other business person. And that is going to be on Wednesday, March the 30th, 2016, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at Antipasta de Napolis at 25 Studio Avenue. And that is also open to non-members. And if you are a non-member, you can pay $25.
Thank you. Others with announcements? Rika, do you want to let people know?
I do. Thank you. We have gotten some candidates for the positions that we have open, which we've announced in the past for the Downtown Economic Council Fund. And I never get the words.
Downtown Development
Fund. I never get the words correct, done correctly. So we have a number of candidates, and we have a last call, and I think if the village manager corrects me, it is February 19th is the last day for anyone else that's interested to be interviewed for the position.
Great. All right.
John, you good?
We're good.
All right, Manager Zambrano.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. We have several items on tonight's agenda, but before we start with that, actually, I would like you just to bring to your attention and to the community the fact that we have expanded the way that we do our agendas, and this was the first week we've actually expanded it. In addition to having the regular agenda before you, we have also included on the website and on Facebook, and including the cable channel also, a little paragraph for each item on the agenda, so that the board and the public know exactly what the board will be discussing on that particular evening. If you have any suggestions, please, by all means, submit them to me, and we'll make whatever changes you feel are necessary. I think this is a good start. So far, actually, we have gotten some pretty good feedback from members of the public, and I think it's a step in the right direction. And again, providing the agenda on the cable channel is giving those individuals that do not have electronic devices other than televisions an opportunity to know what's going on with the board meeting. So just wanted to mention that to you tonight.
Yes, thank you for looking for more opportunities to get information, make it more easily available to the public. That's great.
My pleasure. So based on that, then actually we can get started on the first item on tonight's agenda. Is, if you remember back in the fall, Treasurer Warren had requested authorization to conduct an internal audit control, and we have gone through the process. Jeffrey Wood from Sachs BST, in fact, will be here tonight also, and then to present to the board the results of that audit. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone to Treasurer Tom Warren.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. I'm glad that Abe actually sort of introduced this, because sometimes when you hire special auditors to do special services, sometimes the public starts questioning what's going on. But this was, as Abe mentioned, sort of like part of our discussion back in the fall when we talked about internal controls, and we talked about management's responsibility for establishing and maintaining an internal control system. And also, it's very appropriate that tonight we're talking about departmental goals and objectives for the coming year, because this is something that's been on my list for many years, pertaining to looking to see what's going on in the different village departments to make sure that there's appropriate internal control system and record keeping and such. And I just haven't had the time to do it. So that's why back when we were working on the 2015 budget, we actually asked if the board would put money aside in the budget to actually bring in outside auditors to actually look to see what's going on. So we had actually on a town level, we had hired Sachs BST to come in and do a special audit there. So that's where I knew them. And so, they're not the auditors that do a regular financial statement audit in the spring. So I thought it was a good idea to bring in a different firm with a different perspective that would go to the different departments and review the internal control systems, ask questions and such like that. So Jeff Rudy, one of the partners, is here tonight with the results of his findings. So we had actually met before we came to you in September to actually discuss the village, the different departments, and trying to establish what the scope of the audit would be, and what departments were considered large departments and small departments, so that they could better plan for their work. So we do have a PowerPoint presentation if you'd like to
Looking forward to it.
set aside, and I'll introduce Jeff Rudy, partner with Sachs BST.
Thank you, Tom. Mayor Garrity, members of the Board of Trustees, Village Manager Zambrano, thank you for having me here tonight. As Tom mentioned, we were engaged to do a cash receipts process from the village. Just a little background, Sachs BST is a public accounting firm. We have offices in New York City, Clifton, New Jersey, Albany, New York. One of our biggest groups is the government group, where we do many villages, towns. We also do some counties throughout New York State. We're very familiar with the governmental area, and we also have a special group that does internal control audits. So we used our expertise to actually go through the process with you, and we're happy to report the results to you tonight. So the purpose of this was to identify the processes of the village and come up with an understanding of how the different departments work, the strengths and weaknesses, and make some recommendations going forward of what we feel can strengthen the internal controls of the village. So this was basically a three-step process. The first step was that we designed an internal control questionnaire, gathering some knowledge from the village with the help of the village treasurer's office. We then met with them and went through a list of the village departments, and then decided which departments that we would actually go through an interview and gather some information from. I'd just like to say that, you know, no department likes an outsider to come in and ask them questions and try to find out what goes on. And I must say that the professionalism of all the department employees was exemplary, and we really appreciate it. And they really engaged us and gave us some good feedback and some good information. So that's definitely a good point that you should be proud of all the employees. So not to go through the details of every department, we actually came up with a set of questions as the third part of it. There were 10 questions, and we asked the same questions to every department. It took us about 2 days to go through each department and asked these 10 questions. So we actually summarized the questions in a matrix here. There we go. So some of the basic questions we asked was, do you accept cash? Is there a log for the cash? Is it reconciled? When is it sent to the Department of Finance to be deposited? And a number of other questions regarding if cash is kept on hand, is it secured? And does anybody else have access to the cash when it is left overnight? So different departments gave different answers. Some were good and some needed some improvement. So through these questions, we actually then summarized the notes from each department. We won't go through all of those. I know you actually had a copy of this to look at. Hopefully you read it. I think the important things is the recommendations that we came up with. After we performed all the interviews, we sat down, came up with some recommendations. We met with the village treasurer's office, Tom and Dale, and we went through these and came up with some conclusions. And later on, you'll see the answers that the village came up with to the recommendations that we provided. So our first recommendation was that there should be maintain a daily cash log for all departments in transaction number order and sequentially numbered invoices. So it's very important for internal control purposes to keep sequentially numbered invoices and receipts. This way we can track to make sure that all the cash that was collected is accounted for properly. The other thing we recommended is that all cash receipts should be reconciled on a daily basis. And everybody who actually reconciles it should sign off and date it. That's important when it goes up to the treasurer's office, so it could be tracked and traced into the bank deposits. We also recommended that the department head should review the receipts log on a daily basis, and if there's anything out of sequence, There should be an investigation why this happened, and it should be reviewed and corrected. One of the most important things we recommended is that all cash be transferred to the finance department on a daily basis. This is important that it doesn't lay around. A, you should have it in the bank to use it for operations, and B, it's just not a good accounting procedure to leave the cash around. There are times when you can't do it. That's understandable. So the suggestion that we made is that it be secured in a locked vault or in a locked drawer. So it's important that that happens. I know procedures are put into place since then to make sure that that occurs. One recommendation we made concerned the planning department, that they should consider assisting in performing cash receipts and log reconciliation process. So it's a very large department, and they probably need some help in doing that on a daily basis. And of course, one of the most important things is using the right systems and access to the software. I know you're going through an actual change in software now, and that hopefully will give Tom this will give him some good input to actually implement some controls in the new system to incorporate some of these items. So those were our basic overviews. Overall, I think that the processes show that you were in pretty good shape as far as most of these items. Just a few of them needed some tightening up, but there was nothing that really stood out as not being done correctly. Subsequent to that, the village treasurer and deputy treasurer then responded to our recommendations, department by department. They went through, they met with all the staff in the department, they went through our recommendations, and they also went through what suggestions they had to implement these recommendations. So that's listed in the overall response from the village. I think it was a good exercise. First of all, it makes all the employees aware that somebody's actually watching, keeping track of what's going on, and it's important for them to be refreshed once again to know what they need to do every day to make sure that the cash is accounted for correctly and transmitted to the finance department correctly. So that's basically our report. As I said, Tom has implemented some new procedures, and I think he's going to update the manual to incorporate a lot of these suggestions. Anybody have any questions or comments on it? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So, thank you very much for detailing the report with us. And you indicated that there have already been some changes to procedure, thank you, that have taken place functionally. And
Yes.
Tom, you're going to memorialize it in a more formal manner for the handbook, so that the institution will be aware of the best practices that are now being recommended. Do you feel like this was you wanted this, right? So.
I guess, as I said, this was one of the items that was on my long-term list of goals and objectives. And this isn't the end of it. It's not like it's checked off and I can move on to the next item. This should be an ongoing process to stay in tune with the departments and to look to see what's going on. And I did talk with Jeff about what should the auditors do when they're here doing the regular audit for the village, and that was something that was enlightening. And when we go out to bid on our next contract, we might want to insist that when the auditors select something to look at in our office in terms of like a cash receipt, they should actually take that cash receipt and not just trace it through our records upstairs. They should also go back and trace the record or trace the cash receipts back to the department records. So it was interesting
Sure. Just curious, obviously you do this for other municipalities, and I know that Tom takes great pride in the department. How do we compare to other municipalities in terms of our present controls? Obviously, you made some very good recommendations, and there's always room for improvement, but I'm just curious.
Yes, I think overall, you're definitely in the upper 25% of the towns and villages that we do. There are controls, they are followed mostly, and they just needed a little tightening up. So there was nothing that stood out as immediate attention that needed to be done or corrected. So I think the most important thing is that the cash is transmitted as quick as possible into the finance department, and that solves a lot of problems.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
spending time with our department heads and for pointing out how all the folks that you worked with in the departments were so amenable and agreeable and helpful to making the process go smoothly. That means a lot. And Tom, you always, you're very attentive and looking out for the village and making sure that we're doing everything as properly and efficiently as possible. So I appreciate you recommending this effort, and I'm glad that it was helpful in making us reducing our liability and making us more accountable to the folks that we serve. Thank you very much. Both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The second item in tonight's agenda is we have representatives from, a representative, Jim Kaloran from Habitat for Humanity, who's going to talk to the board about the he wants your blessing coming to the village to restart a program that is not strange to the village of Ossining. Habitat has been in the village before, and they have actually rehabbed several properties over the years, including we also have a gentleman here who's a resident of the village of Ossining for 46 years, and he has taken part in 3 of those rehabs over the years. But I thought it would be a good way to be able to address some of the issues that we have in some of our areas of the village where our residents need help in maintaining the properties. So, but again, I will let Mr. Kaloran present to the board his program.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
How y'all doing? Good?
Good.
I'll pass out a package to the board. I hope I have enough. I don't know if it's easy to follow an auditor or hard. We'll see. But this is a package for you to pass these board members. And I was fortunate to meet with Abe and Joe. And I feel like it's good to be back home. And as you look inside, it kind of tells you some of the things that we've done. And this is on public access, this stage.
It is, yes.
So I want to say it's an honor to be in front of all the citizens, and mucho bendiciones para mi hermanos and hermanas. And it's just great to be here to be what I feel like being back home in the heart of Westchester to me. And I want to dedicate this just little being back here to John Gallagher, troublemaker par excellence, and many of him. Much of our success over the years, the 20+ years in the Westchester, has been because of people like him. Many of the people that volunteer with us. Also dedicate this briefly to Ralph Degnan and to Bill Doherty, two retirees who dedicated their life to help us get going in Ossining. So it's been a typical day. If you see Fios, and I don't know if you have Fios or Cable 12 up here, whatever one, but at 7 o'clock, we opened our headquarters and restored to 40 fire victims that were burned out in a fire in New Rochelle. And because we have a restore, which I know Laura Lee knows about, and Abe and Joe heard about, there are 800 in the country, and our dream is actually starting one here or in Yorktown or Peekskill. We also make it a disaster center, that when something like that happens, the local police, which I'm honored to work with many police departments, said, Jim, can you open your center? And we made it not only a restore this morning, but a center for fire victims. This past summer and fall, I helped some of the fire victims in Ossining with furniture, as well as Peekskill with the Fremont fire. And that restore becomes a resource in many ways, not only to help homeowners who are just moving in to the county. We are the new Brooklyn. as I'm sure you're seeing people buying from Brooklyn. Many people are moving from the city with the high cost, and they rehab their homes and getting things from brand new things donated from 100 windows, actually from a company that closed in Austin, to brand new doors or things from Boardwalk Empire, et cetera. So we hope one day we'll have a restore here. You know, Austining we've worked on properties. Our main mission is that we believe everyone in the village should go to bed at night in a simple, decent home. And I don't want to equivocally, all of you believe that, and have a great village here. I love being in Austining. We have a program called Brush with Kindness that we help rehab seniors' homes and veterans' homes, or people who are struggling to pay the taxes or pay their mortgage, and to rehab their home to keep it up. So I'm blessed now that I have thousands of volunteers. Literally, I had 15,000 volunteers last year, including West Point cadets. I'll show you some of other show and tell here. We've had West Point cadets help us in the village. These are 2 foreclosed homes that were totally run down in Austin, that are in Yonkers, that were for veterans' homes. They're simple, but they are now on the tax rolls, and 2 veterans' families have them on what I call Battle Hill. This is our newest project in Chappaqua, taking an old church, putting it on the tax rolls, and these will be 2 condos, passive houses. And we're very energy efficient in our families' homes, as I know the village is. As I looked at the great libraries, I drove down the other night and realized when it was being built and how energy efficient that was. But these will be 2 condos, and rehabbing something that was off the tax rolls and making it for families, and that's on 300 King Street. We'll be in Millwood as well. These are flood design homes in Mamaroneck that we did in 2006 that became award-winning above the flood line, and we knocked down a condemned house and built 2 families' homes, and that became a model for Hurricane Sandy. We had 200 homes in Mamaroneck in 2006 when there were floods, and why we're back up North County is because for 3 years I've deployed 9,000 volunteers out to the Rockaways, where we worked on over 1,800 homes, gutted and mucked them, and to this day I still have a team out there. This is a zero-energy home in Yonkers with a marching band that we have. We started a marching band. If you asked me 20 years ago if we'd have a marching band, I'd say no, but the kids in the neighborhood have really few programs, and that became a catalyst for us to transform the neighborhood. So I've given over $1 million of volunteer labor to that neighborhood. At 4 o'clock, I just left a meeting with the mayor of Yonkers and the planning department to look at helping to work in another neighborhood. And so because of great volunteers like John, and retirees, and high school kids like Austining high school kids, or churches and synagogues that volunteer with me, or companies. One of the first companies, John, you'll remember that we worked on Lillian's home, and the mortgage is now paid off in 17 years. The CEO started to cry, and they had prepared a speech for her, and she ripped up the speech, and she said, you know, Stavell just showed me his home and his room that the company and the corporate employees have worked on. So, you know, everything about Austining represents the best of America to me, and the best of what diversity is about, and the best of what people working together is about. I spoke at the Knights of Columbus the other day. I'll speak at St. Anne's, and anywhere that you'd like me to. Abe said, can you come? And on short notice, we cover a lot of bases, but I have thousands of volunteers, and we will be back up in this area. We'll have volunteers in Chappaqua tomorrow. We'll have volunteers in Millwood starting in the end of March, and it's good to be back in the area, and love to be a resource to all of you, and to help in any way. And then also, if there's a family that you ever know that has nothing, and you call me and say, Jim, can you help? I remember there was a lawyer who, a senior was illegally evicted, and a lawyer from town here, the senior was evicted, and they called and said, Jim, the landlord, threw out all of their stuff, and that same day we had reestablished and delivered all furniture to the family and to the senior, and they were back whole again. So we do things like that because I have so many people that help me, and great to be here. So, I know Babe and Joe told you, but we have a bus waiting. We're gonna do the first village night build, and no, we don't have it for Hamilton. But, you know, our mortgages are interest-free, no down payment. They're great groups like IFCA. They, I mean, well, I think you work, someone works for IFCA here. Oh, okay. What's your first name? Wanto. So it's a great organization. And there's you know, we just want to make it intergenerational New York, that people can live in New York and afford to live here and not leave it. And same with us. And I know that's your goal every time you work together. Am I correct? Did they used to hold the town board meetings down by, was this the town meetings always?
Village and town boards have work sessions in Village Hall, and we have our regular meetings at the courthouse on
Oh,
Spring
okay,
Street.
right. 'Cause
So we
I was
alternate
down at the
weeks, yeah.
courthouse for a while, so I
Yes.
okay, so that's.
Yes, we keep you on
So,
your toes.
any questions? It's just an honor to be before you, and answers, or, we always say the excitement is building. We'd like to help in any way possible to be here again. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, John?
I don't think so.
You know, John has galvanized people for years and has been a blessing up here. He's helps in Sing Sing every weekend. He's tried to put me there a few times, but
Like the piano, that sings it.
helping with the you know, in a great prison outreach ministry education program. So it's real. He's just an unsung hero that doesn't look for anything and does amazing. So.
So, as any folks who are at home who are watching, you give us a lot of background on some of the work that you've done
Sure.
in the area. So, let me just make sure that folks their takeaway is if
Sure.
they're in a circumstance where they or a neighbor or a friend needs some assistance in maintaining their home, or just on a regular maintenance basis, is that the Brush with Kindness?
Brush
is
with
that-
Kindness program, right. And also, our website, by the way, is habitatwc.org, and Instagram and Twitter, habitatwc.
Okay.
And then also, we are a resource for, which you aren't seeing many, but, you know, and you know, if there are empty foreclosed houses or zombie homes, which is the proverbial term, anything like that, we can be a real resource to that.
Great.
And because of Brush with Kindness, if there's any community centers, we've actually painted community centers, church halls, synagogue halls.
Great.
You know, it's a place, and we believe that every kid should pick up a hammer again and actually learn to grow food. We have a big, you know, we work in a lot of food desert areas, and then kids should learn to grow food. We hope cancer is gone in their lifetime. And as home ownership goes up, our statistics shows education goes up, crime goes down, and as green goes up, we know health goes up and the community goes up. So it's you know, you have so much great things going on, but we hope to be here and for a long time to come again. So
Thank you. Thank you
Right.
for coming and letting us know about
Thank you
the
very much.
more
Thank
of
you
the
so much.
resource that you
Thank
can
you
be.
for
Oh,
being here.
Trustee Codman has a question?
My father's involved with Habitat in Maine, so.
Oh, great.
He's a big fan of Resort, and he was in the real estate business for years. So I'm very familiar with the organization, and of course Jimmy Carter, back in the day, was one of the founders of the.
Right. He's still hammering
Still
away.
banging hammers, I
Yep.
hear.
I've been with him. John's been with him. I've been with him 5 times, and
But, my question is when's your next project in Austin? Are you gonna do something here?
well, you know, we love to. There is a family that got burned out that we're seeing if we can help them over off of Clark. We're working with the family in the school there. The school is it's a great family, and we've been talking to the building department about that. Again, all of you know where there may be families or the public. They can also email relief@habitatwc.org or jim@habitatwc.org. And I work with the building departments or the local planning department or any referrals and say, hey, could you look at this project? Or we might get a call or an email. I'll give my phone number in case people don't have email, 914-403-4821, 403-4821. And you know, there are some land, there's some land that we looked at 20 years ago that still hasn't been built on, and that could be, I'm a little confused sometimes between the town and the village, but that we could work on building.
Seacon Road on the way down to the train station. It's a nice big piece. Bill Burton offered me 20 years ago, and then he said,
John, I'm sorry, can you speak to the mic because they can't hear you on
He
television?
said, John said Secor Road,
Mhm.
that was, we looked at 20 years ago, and there's, I think there was a piece of land off of Aqueduct in North Malcolm. So maybe we could take a ride around with whoever you designate and see if there's anything. And again, if there's something off the tax rolls or something, so,
Thank you.
really be a great opportunity for us to be here.
I will just comment that the properties on Secor Road, the village, is just looking to get some understanding of what their value is because it's been brought to our attention by a couple of people that they might be interested in investing in it.
It's a
So,
nice piece of property.
yeah, it's beautiful.
It
It's beautiful.
And
Nice
some of the
views.
religious communities have talked to us over the years to see if we could help to build some homes. And again, our interest-free mortgages, no down payment, getting it back on the tax rolls, and having people volunteer again together is a. And the other thing I would just last add is if you target one neighborhood and say, hey, we also donate these planters to villages and towns and cities. We've donated 160 planter boxes that are made by our high school clubs and volunteers. I just had a retiree come in today who's a carpenter. He said, oh, I'll be glad to teach the kids that. I showed them the planters. And we donate those to a street. So if you want to say, well, let's target a neighborhood and say, Jim, could you work with the residents and we could do some energy efficient training, we could drop planters, we could help rehab the seniors home, and you know, certainly that becomes a value that we can. I always think about turn on the light and make the neighborhood what I call NMU. Can you all say? Can you say NMU? NMU, no more ugly. Transform a neighborhood, and it doesn't take much. It's kind of like the broken window theory. You fix one broken window, you add a flower, you keep saturating with love and volunteerism, and you can change. We've changed many neighborhoods and been fortunate and appreciated the property values of the homeowners helping their taxes. And last thing about the restore, we generate sales tax. We really would love to see. I envisioned it at Acadia Shopping Center. Keep your eyes open. We transformed a rundown retail space in New Rochelle, which generated $25,000 in sales tax, hired local people the first year. Our goal is to have another one up in this area as well as Elm's Ready and Greenbrick. So you know how good it is, and Lori Lee does too. So thank you all so much for your time and for the people of Boston. We love you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item on tonight's agenda is we want to talk to the board about a no smoking policy in the parks. It will require that we, the board, consider a draft local law that has been provided to you. But I just want to give a little bit of background as to why this is before the board. As we prepare for the opening of the Sing Sing Greenway, excuse me, one of the rules of the Greenway is to prohibit smoking on the Greenway at the request of one of the property owners that granted the village an easement on part of the Greenway. So I thought it was a good opportunity for us to bring this to the board for your consideration, and also as part of an initiative to provide clean air in the parks, and also promote wellness in the community. So again, this is before you for your consideration. We can certainly, as I mentioned, Corporation Council has in fact prepared a draft local law, which, as I understand, may have been before the Board of Trustees at some point in the past.
It actually was in response to a request by Trustee Quezada, following last year's 4th of July celebrations. He had circulated an email asking whether we could join the other municipalities nationwide who are smoke-free and have smoke-free parks. He'd sent me a list and asked me to take a quick look. So you can see it says Introductory Local Law 7, because I was drafting 6, and then when this came in, I quick drafted 7 and sent it out in response to Trustee Quezada and his experience at the 4th of July celebrations last year. So we can bring it forth, give it a new introductory number, or we can discuss it further. We can make it tighter. The town did move forward with a ban, and they provided specific distances from playground equipment. They did permit it in the parking lots. I mean, there are many ways to do this. I drafted it as a complete ban, and it's completely within your purview to do something less than a complete ban.
what are we being asked to do?
Whether we want smoking or not smoking in the park.
I know, but tonight, what are we being asked to do?
Well, if you want to discuss it, I mean, whether the draft that we have proposed to you, whether that's your liking, whether that's just something that you would want to consider adopting at some point in the future, we just, you know, would like to know if this is the direction that the board would like to go into at the parks, so.
Yes, John?
This was a topic of conversation at the Rec Advisory Board meeting on Monday night, and I got a chance to get a little bit of history. Apparently, this was also brought before the board a number of years ago, and the Rec Advisory Board, all members of them at that time were in favor of a complete smoking ban in the recreational areas of the village. For whatever reason, it did not pass or did not move to legislation at that time. So it's still the feeling of the members of the Rec Advisory Board that they would like to see this passed, and I am certainly in favor of it.
I would guess my question would be from an enforcement perspective. If there's a smoking ban in the parks and somebody is smoking in the parks, and a police officer sees somebody smoking in the parks, then what? What's the enforcement mechanism?
We can certainly add an enforcement mechanism, and the general enforcement provisions of your code would prevail in that case. You have a sort of a catch-all for your local ordinances. That would prevail, or you could be as specific as you would want to be, and you could add it specifically to this chapter.
I'm not advocating, I just wanted to understand it.
Yeah,
So,
there is a general enforcement provision in the code.
What's the general enforcement? Yeah, I don't understand
wanna
the
speak?
answer.
It-
What happens if I'm smoking in a park?
Nothing. Today, nothing.
no, but if we pass this 4 months like this summer,
Okay.
then what happens?
Well, you'd be issued a court ticket, and much like the police draft court tickets for any number of code enforcement violations, then you would have to make an appearance in court and you'd be adjudicated, or you could plead guilty and pay the fine.
Okay, so do we have police patrolling our parks?
Well, you know, it just so happens that our chief of police
Yeah,
is
I
here.
know, I see
Kevin,
him sitting back there.
Chief, do you wanna,
Do we have police
I
patrolling
don't know if you were
our
prepared,
parks?
if you reviewed this, but,
It's just a question.
I didn't get a chance to take a look at it. We do patrol the parks.
You
all
do
of them
patrol the
regularly.
parks, okay.
We have park rangers, correct, Chief?
In the summertime, we have civilian employees that are part of the rec that will pass through the parks, and in the past, they've been responsible for things like, we've gone back and forth with whether we lock gates at vets and do other things like that, but also just checking to make sure that there's, that everybody's using the park properly. At times, we've had disputes over recreation department usage in schools and different things like at Nelson Park where it's shared space. But as far as this, yeah, I mean, we'll patrol it. I didn't get a chance to look and see what.
That's okay, I just
any
wanna know
fines.
what you do today, basically, and the parking lots are considered a part of the park, right?
Yes.
Parking lots adjacent.
Yes.
Until I saw this, I actually thought it already was banned in parks, but okay, this is good
That
news.
was my understanding as
I
well.
actually
was-
thought it already was.
I was surprised
think-
that this wasn't enforcement.
well, but it is in the town of Ossining Park, so Lewis Engel Park, there's a no smoking, even though it's in the village of Ossining, but it's a town park, correct? So this would be expanding that to the village parks, and also, we're not gonna exempt the parking lots, at least not as this is drafted.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, as this is drafted, no, but.
I'm not suggesting that we should.
Yes, yes.
Just
We can,
clarifying.
we can do, we can establish distances from particular recreation areas, but I simply drafted very broadly because it was an attempt to get the conversation moving last year when the topic came up.
Great. Does anybody have
Thank
any,
No, it's just,
deeper
you know,
questions?
So I'm in favor of it. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean,
Can we put it on
having
next
thought
week's
that it
agenda?
was already in place, I'm all in favor of it. It's public space with kids running around, basically, so.
yes,
So it's gonna be placed on the agenda next week, or?
I can put it on to call for a public hearing?
great.
Please.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
be
you.
happy
That's
to.
Thank you very much. Does that mean that we're gonna have to change any signage in our parks?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, somebody, there's a sign concession.
Yes.
All righty.
Well,
moving right
you.
along.
Thank you. Also, related to recreation and parks, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board has, I guess, at the suggestion of the Superintendent of Recreation, Chris Soy, actually reviewed the bylaws, and they're recommending a couple of updates. So, Chris, if you can come up and just discuss the process and the reason for the changes, please.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, trustees.
Good evening.
Mid to late last year, we just, with the Recreation Parks Advisory Board, I just brought to them a review of the bylaws. Again, just as a kind of revisit and a review process. Haven't really been done in a while. Just wanted to see if there was things that we could update, language that we could change, or any need to do any further revisions of the bylaws. It was reviewed by our members of the board, and what I presented to the village manager and in front of you is the, I would say, relatively modest language changes to the bylaws. So that's it wasn't a revamping or major overhaul of the existing, but just some clarifications and some language changes in the bylaws.
Please, John, yes.
Yeah, with Chris being new and everything, the Rec Advisory Board kind of took the opportunity to kind of look at everything and line things up. And so I think it was great that Chris brought it to everybody's attention. And we all sat around a couple meetings and made some minor adjustments. There's no major changes here. The only thing I would say is that this change would also have to be agreed to by the town board. Usually it kind of worked, but we're kind of doing this backwards, and I realize that as we get started, usually the IMA team gets together first and talks about it, but this is fairly minor. I can't see there being any disagreement from the town board, so I'm thinking this is gonna.
And the town board liaison was in
That's
attendance
correct.
at the meeting on Monday evening,
Well,
correct?
she was there, she wasn't there at the meetings when we had discussed the revisions, but Kim Jeffries was there. I'm sorry, Kim Jeffrey, was there last Monday night and was aware that we had made the changes, and I believe it's gonna be going to their work session next week.
Great.
So things are parallel here at this point.
And for anybody at home, I mean, these are pretty, sometimes it's just a language tweak, like instead of saying town side, it's gonna say unincorporated area. So it's just a tightening up and cleaning up, which is, reflective of the attention being given to the process by the folks on the council, so we appreciate that.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We're moving
Yes,
better than I
Yes.
thought
The only
tonight.
thing I would wanna make
Yes.
sure is that everybody, I guess, does everybody have a chance to look at the changes, or?
Yeah.
I would want to just get consensus here,
Yes.
that we're all okay with this.
Right. Yeah, and the summary that we provided also for the board actually includes just, there's an extra, just the changes have been brought out for your attention. We had included with the agenda, the initial, the original, and the change ones also, but we did not have a redlined version of it, so that's why we put the changes separate, so that you will be able to identify them.
Thank you, it was very helpful. It makes it very clear what
So-
the detailed changes are. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. The next one, we have a certiorari settlement for 246J South Highland Avenue.
That's
Corporation Council will address.
correct. This is the M&T Bank property. It's 246J South Highland Avenue. It's just for a single year. The total is $9,143.28. As you know, the town negotiates these settlements and we sign on to them from there. So I bring it up only because it would need a resolution next week authorizing the reimbursement of the overpayment.
Okay.
For what year?
What's the dollar amount? Do you have that?
9,000.
It's for the,
Thank you.
yeah, it's $9,143.20.
Actually, that's that was the previous incorrect amount. We had sent out the revised schedule earlier today, which is $9,293.81.
Yeah, it's not a big difference.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. We're
Yeah.
We accept
We're not-
either of them. We don't really want either of them, but that's fine.
I have the correct dollar amount in the resolution. It was the backup that was incorrect.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
got
what
it.
year was
This is for the assessment year 2014 for the tax year, no, it's for the assessment year 2015 for the tax year 2016. So
Okay.
it's the M&T Bank.
Overassessed.
Correct.
Last year.
Well, yes, they
That's
settled
determined.
for this amount of the overassessment. Yeah.
And again, this is one of the properties that when the assessor was before the board back when, during the budget process, this is one of the properties that was identified as the upcoming settlements.
Okay, so it's not a surprise.
No.
And then we have a tax tertiary settlement also with the SCAR, so.
These are the small claims assessment reductions. These are the matters that don't go to court. They go before the Board of Assessment Review locally. These are individual property owners. They provide sufficient evidence of an assessment in question, and the local board makes a determination. Usually they're grouped like this. These are a number of properties all coming together, and we have to do a general resolution on your agenda next week. The total is $10,963.78. And if you take a look at the backup, we had estimated, we had set aside a dollar amount in the adopted budget for SCAR payments of $45,000, and also by comparison, Tom and Dale pointed out that in 2015 the aggregated amount was $20,945.85. So this is the payment for the properties in your attachment, and there are a number of them. You can see the attachment. So this is a grand total of $10,963.78. The highest refund amount is an $1,100 bill. The rest are all in the, actually on one other exceeds $1,000. The rest are all in hundreds. So these are small repayments of the assessments. As you know, the grievance period each year approaches once the roll is out, the opportunity for the individual property owners to come forward and file a grievance, and this is the end of the process for those who came forward last year during the grievance period. And again, it will need to be a resolution in total for next week.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Again, we had actually, and one of the topics that we had initially for this particular work session, we had to move because the individuals were not ready. So that's why the agenda is not as long as they have all of others have been in the past. But anyway, I think that this will give us an opportunity to be able to give the department heads that are before the board tonight to spend some time and answer some questions and provide their goals and objectives for 2016. The first individual that I'm asking to come up before the board is Lynn Brooks Abney, who's the new Director of Planning and Development. Although she's only been with the village for 2.5 weeks, I would like for her to give to you some of the things that she has been working on, and some of the things that she has planned for 2016. And I'm very proud to say that she's doing an outstanding job. So thank you, Lynn.
And this is the first opportunity that many folks are getting to meet Lynn.
Yes.
So thank you very much for joining us. We're very excited to have you here. As you know, your work is high on the list of priorities for this board. So we have an incredibly long list of requests of all the things we want you to get done. And I know you've hit the ground running. So I look forward to hearing your perspective so far and what you think of the village and how you can be helpful to us.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board of Trustee members. So just to start out, so since I've only been here 2.5 weeks, this is really like brush strokes. There's no baseline data, no quantifiable data. This is all general. And I can come back at a later date and start with the baselines. So first off, with respect to the building and planning department, one of our top goals is to streamline some of our processes, our applications. We've already started to look at how we can edit some of our applications, make it simplified, more understandable for members of the public. We're also looking at digitizing it, creating an online process so that that, you don't have to come into our office, you can do it online. We are also already, on this third week, looking at ways we could make our department more efficient, more accessible to residents, make the processes more understandable, how we can better provide customer service to the members of the public. And we are looking at coming up with comprehensive strategies to dealing with some big issues. One of them is affordable housing within the community, identifying locations for it, understanding how we can get developers to help us when they come to develop here, how we can get buyback from them, opportunities within the community, and how to generally make it accessible. With respect to code enforcement in general, we're looking at how to look at life safety and health issues, make it more understandable within the community, how we can partner within other departments, how we can work with the fire department, the police department, and other departments in general, how we can, we're also looking how we can partner with the community, how we can make our businesses work with them to promote economic development, work with our nonprofit organizations, look at how future development could help better Austining, and look at how we can meet residents and community organizations in the community and how they could provide opportunities, volunteer opportunities, just engaging them in a more positive way. And then we're looking at how we can use social media in a positive way within the building and planning department. We've noted that Public Works has a really good presence on the social media, how they have the little oops stickers show up there. New York State last year focused within code enforcement, they really focused on the energy code. And so one of the things is like, how can we've done a really good job with solar permits and moving that forward. So how could we work to promote energy efficiency within Austining? So that's my general brush strokes, and now we'll take up the questions and comments and your suggestions and ideas that your wish list.
Well, I got a chance to speak with Lynn one-on-one this week, so I'll open it up to my colleagues on the board who might want to delve in a little more.
Yeah, I guess one of the things, and I think you and I talked about it briefly, was one of the concerns I have is obviously there is housing that's not conforming, and there also are other houses that have been altered that are now illegal. And I know that there's a provision in the code in Peekskill with regards to the CFO, and one of the things that we had talked about prior board meetings is passing legislation here in the village that would make it so that no property would change hands without a certificate of occupancy. And anecdotally, there have been a couple of things that I've heard about in which properties have been sold to individuals, and with those buying individuals understanding that this structure was zoned a certain way, was a 2-family or a 3-family or whatever, and then they come to own the property and they go to the building department, and the building department is, that's not what their understanding is. And I think that by doing this, you put the seller, they get skin in the game. If they want to sell the property, the closing doesn't happen, or it doesn't go, the transaction doesn't go through until there's a certificate of occupancy for the building department. So you know what you're buying. And I think real estate agents would be totally into this, because they obviously want to represent the building property. So I think this is a piece of legislation we need to do. Excuse me. I really think we need to draw the line in the sand on the properties that we have. We need to be able to see these buildings and see what they are and see what's going on in them. In many cases, it's probably, there's nothing to talk about, because the building is what it is, and the owners have done all the things that they're supposed to do. So for those that are in compliance, this is pretty straightforward. But if you're trying to sell a property for something that it's not, or it's an illegal house, or it's illegally
as you know, we tabled it a couple of years ago, so I have a draft of that one too, actually. So if you want me to haul it out, I can actually send a copy of what we talked about, I think it was 2 years ago. I don't know if you recall, we did the landlord registry and the CO law at the same time. We split them apart, and we put the CO law in the drawer. But it is drafted, and I'll send an email to you when I get upstairs, and I'll send you what I have on the books.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific. Chantal, did you have something on your mind?
Of course, I don't have too many comments. I'm glad to see that the Comprehensive Strategy for Affordable Housing is a good priority. That's one of my passions, and we have conversations, so hopefully we can work together to make more affordable housing for the residents of the area.
Okay. I look forward to working with you.
Rika?
I haven't had a chance to really.
Oh, your mic's not on.
I haven't had a real chance to sit down with you. I'll do that, once you settled in for about 60 days or so. Let everybody else do their thing. It would just be helpful as we go through knowing what you're doing. Is to, and because you knew it's advantageous to put some milestones in place, because when I hear things about it's been done, it's been said, we've asked, a year, 3, 5, 10, 12, whatever it is, it's difficult, and I think it's difficult for department heads to deal with that. So I'm just suggesting that as you go, sort of figure out what lanes you want, where you need our help, where legislation is different from policy, and policy is different than everyday activity, and milestones, so we can look, and you can come to us and say, we thought this would be a 6-month thing, here we are, we've accomplished this, we moved on, because I think people are sort of very excited to see some change and in this particular area. So I think you're going to have a lot of fans if we can, A, get things done, and B, tell people what we're getting done, and what we can't do. So good luck on the job.
Thank you.
Manny, come on. This
Manny
is your
wants to
bailiwick.
say something. It's been dying.
We actually had a chance to talk last week, briefly, sort of. And I'm actually glad to see that a lot of the things that we have talked about, I think you already had that in mind coming in here. It take me a little while to try to see how can we improve, how can streamline some of the process in the development department. And I like the idea, as some few municipalities out there in Westchester have a program online that you can just log in and do your application through it, and a lot of the stuff is gone through that process, and it's very easy. It's just simple stuff. The applications through the PDF, writable PDFs, and all this stuff. Something that I have brought to the board about a year ago or so. So I'm glad to hear that all that stuff is actually in the process and it works right now. I think part of what I'm more, I don't want to say concerned, but I think something that as a board we have to look is, this is an opportunity for us to start making our foundations and housing and development stronger than what they have been in the past. And we should look into the foundation before we start building our walls itself. We should start looking into our code, see where stuff are missing before start talking to developers. So those are the things that I think we are going to need your expertise and your help looking into that. Moving forward, I think that's essential for us to not to start making the same mistakes that we have done in the past, so to speak. Just clarifying little things here and there. There's a lot of work to be done, I think, and the simple stuff that will help the planning and development department a lot. I have the trust that you be able to do those tasks. So, like you and I spoke last week, we said I don't want to ask too much of you because I don't want to put too much stuff on your plate. I send you a bunch of documents, stuff that I have done and that we have done in the past, little speaks to you in 60 days.
taking
I'll
the
give it
last.
a chance. I'll speak to you on the 61st day. But I think I have very confident that you'll do an awesome job here in the village of Austin. And just to kind of piggyback to what John have stated before, I'd have brought the tenants registration sort of bylaw and the one from the C of O registration from Peekskill as well. So Laura Lee and I had spoke briefly sometime last year at the end of the year, and if I really would like that as well to be a focus, and just a small step to what we should be looking into is illegal housing. That's laying down the foundation to what bigger developers and bigger stuff should be happening in Austin. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Did you want to say anything?
No, I would just say, I'm not sure if the public has gotten to learn very much about your background, so I know that they're gonna get to know you more. You're gonna be a familiar face for us, and very pleased to have you in Austin. You were in the public sector recently, and before that you were in New Rochelle as a senior planner there for 8 years, correct? Good, and I think we're gonna have you back at a meeting again soon to talk about some of our big housing challenges, so we look forward to seeing you in this forum again soon. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you so much.
if I may just say something real quick. Someone reached out to me early today, and they were really impressed with you because they had met, I think early this week or last week at some point, and they were really impressed about how you handle and how you help them through some of the process because they were going through. So thank you.
Well, we want residents to know that when they come to your department, you're there to help them through the process, so that's good feedback you're getting already.
Yes, we're glad to help. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Lynn.
you.
Thank you, Lynn. And now we have also somebody that also handles his department very, very well. And I'm proud to introduce him also, Tom Warren, the village treasurer, who will talk to you now.
Hello,
Good
Tom.
evening again, and since we have the projector tonight, I wanted to take advantage of an item that we actually have on the village website.
All right.
So,
By the way.
turn the lights off again.
Did you just click but nothing happened?
It takes a moment to
Oh,
warm
okay.
up. In addition to the this internal control matter, which can close this now, here on the village's website, right on the first page is the adopted budget, which I wanted to refer to because this is actually one of my long-term goals as well. And the mayor and I talked about this when she first took office as mayor, and that is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award issued by the Government Finance Officers Association. I actually, Portchester is actually one of only 11 governments and agencies in New York State that actually went to the trouble of preparing a budget that was awarded this Distinguished Government or Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So this is the overall objective, is to be able to put this in your budget. It's a lot of work, but I feel that we actually made great strides in this year's budget in terms of we actually this section 2 of the department narratives. This was a brand new section that we put in the budget, and this speaks to increasing transparency, and that's what this GFOA award is all about, is providing a lot of additional information to the general public about the local government. And so I kind of figured if like every year we like add new sections, hopefully by the time I retire we'll actually qualify for the GFOA award.
distant future.
Well, it's going to take a few years to get this done, but I also want to give Joe some credit. He started here on, I believe, November 2nd, which was the day before Election Day, which initially I thought, you know what, that's great. Start a job so that you can have a holiday on your second day on the job. But I actually put him to work that day. I asked him to come in, and Joe was able to help me review these department narratives that some of the departments wrote, as well as to fill in some of the gaps. so, you know, there's a lot of work here, and actually wanted to refer to the narrative here that I wrote for the finance department, because actually some of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is actually in the narrative that I wrote. And the first thing here was the mission statement, which to me is like my everyday goals and objectives. And I actually have a story about this, because when I was in Mount Kisco, my deputy and I actually wrote the mission statement for Mount Kisco, and it was great. And I would have loved to bring it here because everything still applied. And the fact that I wrote it is like, I thought it was mine. But the village still keeps that mission statement on their website. So I had a writer's block for years, trying to come up with a mission statement that was different and not look like their mission statement. So as part of this process, it actually took me about 3 evenings to do internet research, to try to get my mind thinking differently about the mission statement. So this is what I came up with. The Finance Department is committed to providing our customers with timely, accurate, and complete information and or services with integrity and dedication, and in a professional, courteous, and service-oriented manner. In addition, our goal is to establish, communicate, and maintain internal control policies and procedures necessary to assist management in the safeguarding of assets, ensuring the proper and efficient use of municipal resources, and helping to provide assurance that the village and town and their employees carry out functions with integrity and in compliance with applicable policies, laws, and regulations. Underlying these internal control principles are the proper authorization, processing, recording, and review of all financial transactions. And I mentioned the IMA that we have with the town, and I list our core customers to include the village mayor and board of trustees, village manager, village department heads, village employees and retirees, as well as residents and businesses, vendors, as well as the governmental agencies that provide oversight and or services to the village. And then also here, after I included the organizational chart for our office, and I described the different duties that we have in the office, I actually had some service goals for 2016 that included, and this is a lot of work for us this year with the implementation of the Munis accounting system and conversion of data from KVS. It's going to keep us very busy, but we're underway. The software it has been, I think, downloaded to our new server, and we actually have scheduled a kickoff meeting with the Munis person that's going to help us, and then we're going to continue the meeting in the afternoon to actually talk about the details to help them plan the setup of the accounting system. And then also another goal for 2016 is to allow for the use of credit cards in department offices. It's hard to believe that it's been over 2 years since we had actually sought specific approval from the village board to enter into a contract with a credit card provider. And then as things progressed and the accounting software system that we had said that we can only use another vendor, and everything just ground to a halt. So this past year, I actually met with at least 5 different credit card providers in conjunction with the town supervisor, my deputy and I, to talk about what was involved and to try to get a better understanding of what was to be involved. And actually a couple of weeks ago, I actually met up again with a local banker from Mahopac Bank. They actually were the bank that we had interviewed that was actually the one that we were most interested in providing credit card services, and they had a connection and authorization with Munis to provide the service that would be recognized by Munis. And now we're actually double checking with their technical specialist just to make sure that also the credit card chip that is a new twist on credit card processing is able to be utilized by a Mayapack Bank's credit card provider, which is actually Elavon. So we're meeting with them later this month in order to try to actually get something up and running. And we need a credit card provider that's separate from Munis, but that would be able to tie in with Munis as well. So that's two very busy goals for us for 2016. And then also, really getting into the specific details or discussing it further, we do have the goal of the reorganization of the duties and functions in the finance department, which, and actually in conjunction with the presentation from earlier this evening, one of my goals is to actually provide more written policies and procedure documentation for our files, as well as to provide written guidance for departments to rely on for their processes as well. So that's what happens to us.
Is there a shift from a personnel and having to deal with some of these technology changes that will occur?
Really, it was more to try to change some of the processes and procedures to really, I guess, help myself and my deputy out, so that we can concentrate on some of the more bigger issues, such as for myself to, find time to write the documentation that we really need to have as part of our policies and procedures, and to do some of the higher level work. So that's really what we're looking for.
Yes, please, John.
Tom, I want to thank you once again for the great work you did on the budget. And I was having a conversation with one of our constituents, and I believe the total budget is less than last year's. Is that right? The total expenditures.
I wish I hadn't shut that
Sure.
off. The actual expenditures are very close.
Right, I was going to say, we didn't have much increase in total expenditures between year over year, correct? And I guess the other, and this is kind of a curveball, and I'm sorry to ask you, but I know that you're passionate about this stuff. So from in terms of our bond payments, my understanding is that the amount of money we pay for debt repayment is less in 2016 than 2015.
I think it's very close. I know I had done a analysis schedule when we had presented the bond resolutions to the board back in January, and I'd actually projected the debt service payments going forward in conjunction with the current bonds. And I think 2016, we actually were paying off one of the bonds that would actually free up money for 2017. So it sort of allowed us to issue the bonds in this year for some of the major capital expenditures, like the sanitation vehicles and the bridge work and that type of stuff, which was going to add to the general fund budget next year because of the bonds that were being retired completely. There shouldn't be much of an effect on next year's tax levy.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, this constituent was talking about, some of the approvals that we did for some major capital expenditures, like the fire truck, the pumper, which it's a significant amount of money, and obviously the rescue truck, which is just short of $300,000. And, but I know when we had our budget discussions and we talked about the budget and where we were from a debt service perspective, my recollection was that we were
guess I wanted the public to know that, yes, we're making some capital expenditures. These are very important ones for our infrastructure, for our departments, providing them with the resources and the vehicles that we need to deliver the services. But I also want them to understand that we're not spending like more money than we did last year on debt service. And as you say, we've retired the debt as well, and so some of that's going away, and then we are able to borrow some money to really take care of our infrastructure. So.
I'll look into that and I'll verify that for you. And I actually was prepared, I was anticipating that the board might ask the question about what the impact would be on future budgets with the debt that was approved by bond resolution last month. And so Abe has talked to me about having a work session with the board to talk about like the 4 or 5 year forecast of the general fund, water and sewer fund finances. So I do have that ready to go. Certainly, I'll update it just before we make the presentation. There's always, when you look at trends and then you start looking out a couple of years, there's always a big gap between the revenues and expenditures because expenditures, increase, like, health insurance, it's come down, but it used to always be like a 10% increase. Retirement system for a while was increasing every year. Now it's coming down, but it's kind of like expenditures are always increasing by like maybe like 5% a year. Departmental revenues always seem to stay kind of flat because in order to increase departmental revenues, like for instance recreation revenues, that means you need to increase the user fee, which sometimes is counterproductive because if you ask for too much as a user fee, then the service isn't utilized as much and you might not generate as much revenue. So the net is that when expenditures increase by 5% and departmental revenues are flat and state aid doesn't increase, other revenues such as mortgage tax and sales tax doesn't increase, that means that property taxes have to increase, and we have the tax levy cap, which is problematic. So when you look to the future, like it's always been this way, there's always a big gap between the projected expenditures and the projected revenues, but somehow we always manage to adopt a responsible budget that is balanced. So,
Well, we have you to thank for that, Tom.
You have the board and the village manager to thank for that. I'm just happy to be a part of the process.
And we are happy that you are as well. Are there other questions or comments for Treasurer Warren?
No, I'm always impressed with the type of work that you do and your office does. Not only in a budget season in November going forward, but through the year. So thank you, Tom, for all the hard work that you do.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. That's, again, I mean, as he mentioned, actually, we have discussed on a few occasions bringing to you information so that you can make some decisions in the future. And, one of the reasons that, again, that some of the changes in staffing were being recommended is to be able to afford Tom to be able to do some of those things that right now he really cannot do because, he's more occupied with the more day-to-day operations. And I think as we move forward, I think it will certainly be beneficial for you as a board and then for the community also to be able to provide more information so that you can make more informed decisions in the future. So, and we, as I mentioned to you, and I have on a couple of occasions, we continue to look at ways that we can save money going into the 2017 budget. There's one particular area that actually we've already started to look into, and that's healthcare insurance. So, I think there's some potential benefits of potential savings, substantial savings that we may be able to achieve come 2017. So it's going to require a little bit of footwork or some legwork with the unions. I think that it's something that we'll be able to work out, and then when the time comes, be able to realize those savings in the budget, so.
Great,
All right.
thank you.
And there's one other thing that I just wanted to mention, is not on the agenda, but just a question had come up because Monday is a holiday, it's President's Day, and I know that the schedule, the sanitation schedule shows that there's going to be pickup. There will be pickup. It's just that people are actually questioning, whether that's correct or not. So just wanted to say yes, the sanitation schedule is correct. We are going to pick up garbage on Monday, President's Day. So
Right, that was one of the changes that was made this year.
correct. Yes.
And then, with some discussion with the union and
Correct.
partially because a lot of people have to go to work that day and they don't realize that it's a holiday. It's not like Christmas when everybody's aware that sanitation crews are probably not working, so we end up with people putting their garbage out,
Yes.
not realizing, not looking carefully at the schedule. So this will help keep our streets clean, and we appreciate the collaboration with DPW to come up with this suggestion. And it's nice that people are looking so closely at their sanitation schedule to
Yes.
take note of that and even question, how could it possibly be so that we'd have such a luxury as sanitation pickup on President's Day?
That's right. And I'm
Happy to
sure
have it happening.
the Department of Public Works staff will put out notifications to also alert our residents that will happen on Monday.
And anybody who's on Facebook can like the
That as well.
Department of Public Works
Yes.
Facebook page to, I'm sure, get a nice reminder of that. Great. Well, it's been lovely to hear from our department heads to finish up this meeting. And Lynn, just getting started, and Tom, it's always a pleasure to see you striving to continue to do exemplary work and to find more ways to continue to improve the efficiency of your department, as well as the opportunities for us to better understand what you're doing through all of your work with the budget and increasing transparency and putting things in context for our community members who you work so hard to care for in our fiscal responsibility. So thank you. Manager Zambrano, before I ask for a motion for recess, is there anything else that we need to discuss?
Nothing else, Mayor. Nothing else.
Then may we have a motion to recess for advice of legal counsel, followed by executive session to discuss issues of personnel related to a specific person.
So move.
On the board. All in favor? Aye. All right, so with that, I say thank you very much for joining us this evening, and please join us next week, February 17th. We will be having our regular meeting at the Birdsall-Fagan Police Court facility. And if you've not already gone to the Ossining Union's Free School District website and taken a look at that letter, I know they would appreciate getting all the support they can for the community to make sure that Ossining is given a second look at how the state is allotting their funding this year. Thank you very much. Good evening.